Her voice was perfection, but her body was a crime scene. When Karen Carpenter died at 32, weighing just 80 pounds, the world blamed anorexia. But her brother Richard finally admits the real cause wasn't just a lack of food. It was a lack of love. Trapped in a golden cage by her own family, she starved herself to disappear. It was the only thing she could control. This is the tragic, untold story of the girl who sang for the world, but cried alone. The brother's confession. To understand the true weight of this tragedy, we don't start in the 1970s. We start today. Richard Carpenter is now an old man. He is the keeper of the flame. He manages the legacy. He remixes the songs. For 40 years, he protected the family image. He protected the myth of the happy Carpenters. But in recent rare moments of candor, the mask has slipped. He has admitted to a deep gnawing guilt. He has admitted that he was too absorbed in his own addiction, his own ego, and his own music to see that his sister was fading away right in front of him. He recently said in an interview about her illness, it was all about control. She had no control over her life. The only thing she could control was what she ate. It is a chilling admission. It acknowledges that the family business, the machine they built together, was the very thing that destroyed her. He looks back at the photos now, photos where Karen is shrinking, where her eyes are pleading, and he sees what the world missed. He sees a cry for help that went unanswered. He admits that he was the golden boy, the genius, the architect, and she was the vessel. He pushed her, he corrected her, he critiqued her. He thought he was making her better. He didn't realize he was making her smaller. And by the time he realized that she wasn't just dieting but dying, it was too late. This confession changes everything. It shifts the blame from a mysterious illness to a specific family dynamic. It forces us to look at the Carpenter story not as a musical triumph, but as a slow-motion murder committed by fame, pressure, and neglect. The invisible child in the golden house. To understand why Karen let herself wither away, we have to go back to the house where it all began. New Haven, Connecticut, 1950. Karen Carpenter was born into a family where love was conditional and talent was the currency, but from the very beginning, the currency was all in Richard's account. Agnes Carpenter, their mother, was a woman of iron will and cold affection. She made no secret of her favoritism. Richard was the prodigy. He was the piano genius. He was the future. Karen? She was just the little sister, the tomgirl, the background noise. When the family moved to California in 1963, it wasn't for a fresh start, it was for Richard. They moved to be near the music industry, to give Richard a chance. Agnes poured every ounce of her energy, her money and her love into her son. She told neighbors, Richard is going to be a star. She barely mentioned Karen. Psychologists call this emotional abandonment. It is a wound that doesn't bleed, but it never heals. Karen grew up believing she was secondary. She believed she was a supporting character in her own life. She didn't have a sense of self-worth. She only had a sense of duty. She started playing the drums in high school. It was an unusual choice for a girl in the 60s, but it makes perfect sense, psychologically. The drums were big, they were loud, and most importantly, they were a shield. She could sit behind them, make noise, be part of the music, but no one could really see her body. No one could judge her. She felt safe back there. She felt powerful. She famously said, I love the drums. I feel like I can hide. But fate and Richard had other plans. Richard needed a singer for his band. He heard Karen humming one day and realized the tone she had. The talent is in the girl, he thought. It wasn't a compliment, it was a calculation. He pushed her to the microphone. Agnes pushed her too. Not because she was proud of Karen, but because Karen could help Richard succeed. She was a tool to elevate the golden child. Karen didn't want to be the front woman. She felt exposed. She felt naked without her drums. She felt fat. But in the Carpenter family, you didn't say no to Agnes. You didn't say no to Richard. So she stepped into the spotlight, terrified and unloved, carrying the weight of her brother's dreams on her shoulders. She was about to become the most famous voice in the world, but she still couldn't get her mother to look at her with love. The voice of God and the body of a ghost. In the 1970s, the Carpenters exploded. Close to you, we've only just begun, top of the world. They sold millions of records. They met President Nixon. They were on every TV screen in America. Karen's voice was described as warm chocolate. It was soothing. It was perfect. It was the sound of safety. But behind the scenes, her life was a nightmare of control. Richard was the boss. He picked the songs. He picked the arrangements. He picked the schedule. Agnes was the enforcer. She managed the image. She managed the money. Karen was the employee. She was 20 years old, a superstar, but she still lived at home with her parents until she was 24. She had to ask permission to go out. She had no autonomy. She was a doll in a dollhouse, dressed up and singing on command. And then, the criticism started. The media in the 70s was cruel. Reviewers called their music sappy and bland, but they attacked Karen personally. They called her chubby. They called her Richard's fat sister. For a girl who already felt worthless, these words were knives. She looked in the mirror and she didn't see a star. She saw a monster. She thought, I can't control the music. I can't control my mother. I can't control the critics, but I can control this. She touched her stomach. She started dieting. At first, it seemed harmless. She cut out sugar. She drank only water. She ate salads. Everyone complimented her. You look great, Karen. You look so elegant. The positive reinforcement was intoxicating. For the first time, people were noticing her. Not just her voice, but soon, it became an obsession. It became anorexia nervosa. In the 1970s, no one knew what that was. There was no name for it in the popular culture. People just thought she was disciplined, but it wasn't discipline, it was a slow suicide. She would push food around her plate for hours, cutting it into tiny pieces so it looked like she had eaten. She would wear baggy clothes to hide her frame. She would take dozens of laxatives a day. She was shrinking. 120 pounds, 100 pounds, 100 pounds. She was trying to make herself disappear. She thought that if she could just be small enough, she would finally be perfect. If she was perfect, maybe Agnes would love her. But anorexia is a liar. It tells you that you are fat when you are skin and bone. It distorted her reality. And the family? They watched it happen. Richard was busy. Agnes was in denial. They saw her getting thinner, but they didn't stop the machine. The tour dates kept coming. The recording sessions kept coming. The show had to go on, even if the star was fading. The rebellion that failed. By 1978, the cracks in the empire were showing. While Karen was fading away physically, Richard was falling apart in a different way. He became addicted to Quaaludes, sleeping pills. He was missing cues. He was falling asleep during shows. He was a mess. Finally, he had to stop. He canceled their tours. He checked into rehab in Topeka, Kansas. The machine stopped. This should have been Karen's moment of freedom. With Richard gone, the control was lifted. She decided to do something brave. She decided to make a solo album. She went to New York. She worked with legendary producer Phil Ramone. She recorded songs that were different, more disco, more sexy, more Karen. She cut her hair. She bought new clothes. She started eating a little better because she was happy. She had a boyfriend. She had friends who loved her for her, not for the band. She called Phil Ramone and said, I feel like I'm out of prison. She poured her heart into that album. It was her declaration of independence. She finished it and brought it back to Los Angeles, glowing with pride. She played it for the executives at A&M Records. She played it for Agnes and Richard. She waited for the applause. She waited for them to say, Good job, Karen, we see you. Instead, there was silence. Richard looked at her and said, It's garbage. He told her it was weak. He told her it wasn't her range. The record executives, afraid of alienating Richard, agreed. But the final fatal blow came from Agnes. Her mother looked at her and said, Richard is right. You shouldn't release this. The studio shelved the album. It cost $500,000 to make, but they buried it to protect Richard's ego. They told Karen she had to pay for it out of her own money. Imagine the devastation. The one thing she did for herself, the one piece of art that was truly hers, was rejected by the people she loved most. She collapsed. Phil Ramone later said that he saw the light go out of her eyes that day. She realized that no matter what she did, no matter how successful she was, she would never be allowed to be herself. She would always be Richard's accessory. She went back to the only thing she could control. The anorexia returned with a vengeance. This time, it wasn't just about weight, it was about death. She stopped eating completely. She was screaming for help without saying a word. The marriage that was a trap. Desperate to escape her family, Karen tried one last lifeline: marriage. In 1980, she met Tom Burris, a handsome real estate developer. He was older. He was charming. He seemed successful. He swept her off her feet. He bought her gifts. He told her she was beautiful. Karen thought she had finally found someone who loved her, not the star. She wanted children desperately. She wanted a home of her own. She wanted to be a normal wife and mother. But the fairy tale was a fraud. Days before the wedding, Tom dropped a bomb. He had had a vasectomy. He couldn't have children. Karen was devastated. Her dream of being a mother was crushed. She wanted to call off the wedding. She called her mother, sobbing. "Mom, I can't do it. He lied to me." But Agnes intervened. Agnes reportedly told her, "You can't call it off. The invitations are sent. The press is coming. You made a commitment. You will go through with it." Agnes cared more about the image, the cost of the party, and the embarrassment than her daughter's happiness. So Karen walked down the aisle, smiling for the cameras, wearing a beautiful dress that hung on her skeletal frame, while her heart was breaking. The marriage was a disaster from day one. Tom Burris turned out to be broke. He was living beyond his means. He used Karen's money to fund his lavish lifestyle. He drove her cars. He spent her savings. And he was cruel. He reportedly mocked her body. He called her a bag of bones. He told her she wasn't sexy. The one place she sought safety, her husband's arms became another prison. After 14 months of misery, the marriage ended. Karen was alone again. She was 31 years old. She weighed 90 pounds. Her heart was beating irregularly. She realized she had nowhere to go but back to the family that broke her. The final battle for life. By 1982, Karen was dying. She finally admitted she needed help. She went to therapy in New York with Dr. Stephen Levincron. She tried to eat. She tried to fight the voice in her head that told her she was fat. But the damage to her body was catastrophic. To lose weight, she had been using a drug called Ipecac to induce vomiting. Ipecac is a poison. It is used in emergencies to clear the stomach. But if used chronically, it destroys the heart muscle. It dissolves the fibers of the heart. Karen had been taking it for years. Her heart was literally dissolving inside her chest. There is a heartbreaking scene from her therapy sessions that defines the tragedy. The therapist brought the family in, Agnes and Richard, for a group session. He tried to facilitate a breakthrough. He wanted them to express their love. He asked Agnes, "Mrs. Carpenter, can you tell Karen you love her?" According to witnesses, Agnes refused. She sat there cold and rigid. She said, "I'm from the north, we don't do things that way." Even with her daughter on death's door, sitting there frail and weeping, Agnes couldn't give Karen the one thing she was starving for: affection. She couldn't say, "I love you." Karen left that room defeated. She realized she would never be enough. She realized that the hole in her heart could never be filled by her mother. But she kept trying. In February 1983, Karen was staying at her parents' house in Downey, California. She seemed to be getting better. She had gained a little weight. She was talking about new songs. She was making plans. Friends thought she had turned a corner. But doctors say this is common in end-stage anorexia. The body rallies one last time before it gives out. On the night of February 3rd, she went to 7-Eleven and bought a taco. It seemed like a victory. She went to sleep in her old childhood bedroom. The next morning, February 4th, 1983, Agnes heard a noise upstairs. She went to check. She found Karen collapsed on the floor of her walk-in closet. She was getting dressed. She was unconscious. The paramedics arrived. They found a heart that was beating once every 10 seconds. They rushed her to the hospital. Richard arrived just as they were working on her. But it was too late. At 9:51 a.m., Karen Carpenter was pronounced dead. She was 32 years old. The sound of silence. The autopsy revealed the brutal truth. Karen Carpenter died of heart failure caused by complications of anorexia. But really, she died of isolation. She died because she was a commodity to her industry, a disappointment to her mother, and a bank account to her husband. She starved herself to disappear, and she succeeded. Her death woke the world up. Before Karen, no one talked about eating disorders. It was a shameful secret. After Karen, People started to understand the pressure women face. She saved thousands of lives with her tragedy. Parents started looking at their daughters differently. Doctors started diagnosing it earlier, but no one could save her. Today, when you hear Yesterday Once More or Rainy Days and Mondays, don't just listen to the melody, listen to the pain in her voice. Listen to the sound of a woman crying for help in the most beautiful key ever recorded. It is the sound of a soul that was too gentle for this world. Richard Carpenter is still alive. He is 79. He still manages their legacy. He still talks about the music. He has spent 40 years trying to remix the past, trying to make the songs sound perfect. But the silence next to him is deafening. He knows deep down that he missed the signs. He knows that the golden boy survived, but the angel didn't. She finally found the only way to escape the cage. She is free now. She doesn't have to be thin. She doesn't have to be perfect. She doesn't have to sing for her supper. She can just be Karen. What do you think? Was Agnes Carpenter responsible for her daughter's decline? And do you think the industry has changed, or are young stars still being destroyed today? Let us know in the comments below. Rest in peace, Karen. You are perfect now. This is The Seventh Lens. Thank you for watching.